Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. Today I'm talking with HR Huntsman. How are you doing today, HR?
Ken, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show, my friend.
Thank you for joining me. We had a little bit of clutter in the beginning, but we figured it out really quickly. Just good communication helps a ton. Before we jump in and learn about your business, HR, can you tell the audience a little about who you are and really what possessed you to get on this line of self-employment, entrepreneurship, business owner?
Sure. If we're going to do that, Ken, I'm going to have to take you back to 9 years old. Just bear with me here. It's going to connect. 9 years old is when I was playing in the backyard and I found my father dead. Ambulance came, took him inside. As vividly as I'm talking to you now, I can picture them wheeling him away. I didn't know he was my dad. To further change up the story, he had his first stroke when I was 18 months of age. He lived in our house with my mom and me, and my mom had become his caretaker and remarried. So there's my first stepdad in the house and two half brothers. And there was this guy who taught me how to ride the bike and throw a ball and swing on a swing. And it wasn't until after he passed away that my mom told me that was actually your dad. Yeah, as you're shaking your head, you can kind of imagine how that messes up a little kid. First stepdad runs away with another woman, leaving my mom a single mom of three boys. There's always alcoholism and anger in the house, and men came in and out of my life. Lots of boyfriends and nonsense. And second stepdad comes in a few years later when I was 13 years of age, and he brings abuse, and I can just picture him hitting my mom and brothers and me. And now there's three younger brothers. So I'm the older brother, four brothers. And I couldn't wait to get out of the house. I couldn't wait to leave this dysfunctional, abusive, alcoholic, angry, yelling home. And I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I didn't want that. So I joined the military because kids like you don't go to college. That's what I was told. I grew up really poor. I was called trailer trash, white trash my whole life. I was born in southern New Mexico. Kids like you don't go to college. I can give you the quote: you either become ditch digger or you join the military. I didn't want to be a ditch digger. I was too small for that. Pretty sharp kid. I was already in computer programming, and I scored really high on the ASVAB, so I could pick any job I wanted for the Air Force. Joined the Air Force, and that's when I met John Simmons. And this is why this is important to my story, Ken, is I met John Simmons, captain at the time, retired lieutenant colonel, chaplain, and he took me and a bunch of other young misfits under his wing, and he began to mentor us. And he became the first positive male role model in my life. And he saw I was angry and insecure and all the things you can imagine growing up the way I grew up. And he's the one who told me, H, let's do something useful with that anger. Let's, instead of trying to be successful, let's be impactful. And Ken, that is what began to change my life. My goal at the time when I met John was just to be rich. I was going to be a software engineer. Desktop computers were just coming on scene, and I knew they're going to go someplace. And here we are talking to each other thousands of miles away via video. And I was going to be rich and a software programmer, and I was going to paper over all that pain, right? I couldn't have said it like that at the time. I was just a stupid 18-year-old kid and he said, let's be useful. Let's be impactful. So I changed my entire college education goals, and age 28, I left the military, started my first company, and I built that from scratch to very large. I didn't know anything about leadership. I didn't know anything about scaling businesses. I had to learn all that along the way in the past 30 plus years. And I grew it from scratch to when I retired at age 50, we had 200 people working in 5 countries around the world. And we built orphanages and drilled wells and built vegetable gardens and ran after school programs for kids and feeding programs for under-resourced families and clothing programs and counseling center and food programs for shelters. And that's where I learned And I fell in love with leadership development, Ken. So that's how that 9-year-old boy became this 60-year-old man. Is along the way, as much as I love the projects we did around the world, I'm very proud of the lives we've impacted. What I fell in love with was building teams and building leaders, because that's how you change the world. So there's my story in a nutshell.
Love it. Wow. It's not often that childhood trauma stories match mine.
Is that right?
That's rough, man. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But
it is.
I think you're to a place now you probably have learned how to appreciate.
Oh, it's the greatest thing.
That
yeah.
I'm gonna go way off script here.
Yeah, go. Where are you taking us?
I have, and I'm just going to be wildly personal here. I've got a nonverbal autistic son, and I grew up in a time, and I went to special school district all through school, right?
Okay.
I was that kid that they didn't know what to do with, so they put me in with they called learning disabilities, and they had other creative language for us at that time.
Yeah.
And there's this thought process that was in the 70s of that trauma, helps you overcome those things, and capital punishment and all that stuff. I literally have a joke that says, I grew up in a time where they beat autism out of you. And I don't disagree with that at all. And Tony Robbins has this saying of that, strong men make hard times and hard times make strong men. And I come from a place of we can teach differently. It's more challenging. It's harder. It takes more time, but I think it's the better path. And I think that we're in that evolution. And I'd just like to have your take on that, because I feel like we might have some similarities in that. Because, it's this constant debate in your head. Like, how do you manufacture struggle so that people know how to overcome it without, like, that's a fine line. And I'm a boxing coach, so I know that there's, that's the easiest way for me to figure it out.
Yeah.
Violence is not very seldomly the answer.
Sure. I mean, I obviously, like you, I'm going to have a perspective that I would not be the man. So I've radically changed everything. Like I've been married for 38 years. We have a wonderfully tight family. In love with my kids. I have 2 grandkids. Like the life I lead is absolutely 180 degrees opposite of the life I was handed. And so I certainly have, and it could be survivor bias, but I have a mindset that, and this is the legacy I want to teach my kids. It doesn't matter where you began. It matters what you decide to do with what you have.
Yes.
So I grew up poor in a hurtful situation and lots of death around me. My father wasn't the only. I've lost 2 of my brothers, and lots of, I grew up around death and dysfunction and pain, and you have a choice what you do with that stuff. And because I had a good influence, John Simmons, and he's 85 now. I just talked to him last week, thanked him again for his impact on my life. And because I had someone that was willing to invest in me, I was able to see there's another way. You don't have to carry that dysfunction. And the rest of my brothers did. They carried out, they lived out exactly what you would expect. And I'm the outlier. And I'm the outlier because someone had the guts to invest in me and to see potential in me. And so that's why I do what I do, is because of that I think the way we make the way forward. So anyway, to your point, I would not change a single hard thing that I've gone through. Those scars are my story. They've made me resilient. I can handle anything. There's nothing that scares me. But to your point about hard times make strong men make better times, and good times make weak men, I have to really be diligent in how I raise my kids, and now my grandkids, who are growing up in a far more privileged, healthy environment, and they have to be taught that this is not freaking normal. Like, do you know what your grandpa is? Your grandpa grew up this way. And if we're going to make a dent in the world, it's not going to be because everything's handed to you. So you got to roll up your sleeves. Huntsman's, we work hard. I have my 4-year-old and 2-year-old grandsons on my property 2 to 3 times a week. And we always say, Huntsman's work hard. And they're carrying wood, and they're doing the stuff. Like, no, you got to pick up that stick, young man.
I love mantras.
So we talk about the very thing you said, manufactured hardship. I think that's really important. And all the high achievers that I work with and study, they create hardship for themselves, whether it's running triathlons or ultra marathons or learning to play the violin, or They're creating challenges for them to prove and build resilience all the time.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go to learn to lead, but I want to stay here for just a moment because I also want to talk about a trap that I have fallen into with this underdog syndrome, romanticizing my trauma and creating it for myself. How does somebody prevent that whenever they're trying to, when you recognize, hey, these hardships are what give me the tenacity to go after things, and I'm starting to understand that failure is learning experience, and then you kind of fall in love with failure, and it's almost like your stupid subconscious gets in your way and starts making you fail on purpose because that's how you think you grow.
It's interesting.
Is that a bad loop? How would somebody break that?
The way that I teach mindset shift, and I talk about it a lot because of the journey that I've had, is well, here's how I say it. Until you fall in love with a future version of yourself that is so compelling that it attracts you out of your current situation, you're never going to change. So what I'd say to that loop is, I'm not in love with the trauma. I'm in love with the future version of what I can become to move me away from that, that childhood that I grew up in, because I began to create a vision of the marriage I wanted to have and the family I wanted to have and the impact I wanted to have on whatever kids I would have. And so I fell in love with that future version of my life. It was so compelling to me, Ken. I was willing to change any woe is me mindset, any victim mindset, any crappy imposter syndrome deal that continually and still at 60, I'm as in love with growth now at 60. I'm energized by who I can become when I grow up as much as I've ever been. I can't wait to grow up. I can't wait to see what the 70-year-old and version of me. I still feel sometimes like, for my 60th birthday, I did a Spartan race. I did a 10K Spartan race. And so I'm still in love with falling in love with the future version of me. And I think that can keep us out of some of those doom loops that we can get into.
Knowing where you want to be in life is so important. Being able to imagine that you can get there, believing that you can get there is so important.
Right.
I mean, I'm to the point that I think person should just be delusional about who they are today. You said in love with the future version of yourself. And until I started loving the current version of myself, did I start really seeing significant changes in my life and understanding what that was and practicing self-love and self-care. I grew up similar to you. I never had to see my father. I never got to see my father. So I didn't know he died until about 4 years ago. But
yeah, that's tough.
It's a crazy world that we live in. So I got off track. Learn to lead. When you come through trauma like that and you live your life and you overcome it, most men and women that I know that have overcome some significant set of trauma, loss of a loved one, self-mutilation, whatever it is, drugs, rape, all those things, and they come out of it, they have this natural glow about them and this natural aura that people just tend to follow. I know from my own experience, I was still pretty resentful in life when people started following me, and lots of people followed me, and I was a good leader in some cases and a horrible leader in most. You said learn to lead. And I think that is so important because I think there's a lot of natural leaders in the world that don't take that position really seriously, that they have people that want to follow them. And it's a challenging mindset to get over. So when is it in a person's life when they say, okay, I'm going to accept the role of leader and I'm going to start studying how to be a better leader?
That's exactly my journey. I had never set out to be a leader. I had no leadership model. I never thought about being a leader like you. I resisted it. I just wanted to do my thing. I'm an introvert. Given about 4,000 talks to roughly about 400,000 people. So people find it interesting when I say I'm an introvert. I just like to be in my house. I like to be in the woods with my dogs. So I never set out to be a leader. All I set out to do is change the world. And what I found is people that set out to do amazing things, they gravitate toward that. So I resisted it. Like you said, I resisted at first, like, no, I don't want to lead anything. I just want to change the world. Well, when I realized and just gave into the fact that attracts people, that's when I began to understand that leadership is a craft that I need to hone. And so I have dedicated the last 30 years to the craft of leadership, to motivating and inspiring people, to gather people in groups to do amazing things, whether it's build companies or build orphanages or build amazing teams, to gather people in a social setting, in a social group where they can move in a direction that alters their work environment or their work culture. To study that craft is one of my greatest pleasures. And now to teach it, now I'm a teacher of that craft. So as I learned it, I fell in love with it and I began to teach it. And it's just the joy of my life to teach people how you can change the world by impacting other humans.
Beautiful. So what you really teach then is the leadership, is how to be a better leader.
Yeah.
Okay. We teach
Well,
kind of the opposite thing. I teach how to be amazing all by yourself.
yeah.
Right. I'm a creativity coach and a
Yeah.
boxing coach. So I'm very singular, the individual, and then how they lead is important stuff, man. Um, I wish I would have had a leadership, like somebody that teaches me how to be a leader. I've never had that kind of coaching, right? It was something that I've had to come through through lots of bumps and bruises and black eyes,
Same.
lost
Same way.
relationships and,
Same.
all of those things. And if I had, hell, I think if I would watch this episode for one time, I probably would have had better relationships in my career. But what are a couple of things that a leader's doing today that he should be considering in his head to say, "Oh, I need help. These are things that I need to overcome," because a lot of leaders get there not always out of service, but a lot of leaders get there out of ego, right? And I think that ego has to dissolve a lot to become a really good leader.
100%.
But that mentality in our world is promoted quickly, right?
Yes.
So what are some of the things that person's doing in the leadership role today that should be triggers that say, "Oh, I should probably step back a little bit and
Yeah.
relook about how I lead"?
So this is my journey as well. I didn't know anything about leadership. Everything I began to assimilate about leadership came from my culture. So I looked at the John Waynes of the world and the Rambos of the world and these singular, monumental people that, just commanded this dynamic deal. And it's like, oh, so leadership is about giving orders to people and they follow them. So it's this positionary. So that's what I thought. And my mom was an entrepreneur and ran gas stations in the 70s. And so leadership is bossing people around. Like, okay. And so I started my first company. I thought leadership is telling people what to do and they do it. And I think Gen Y and Gen Z are doing a great job of teaching us that that's certainly not how we're going to be led, for sure. And that's just not how humans work. So I think one of the big mistakes that people are still making is thinking that leadership is position oriented rather than simply it's a place of respect. And you already said the magic word. The servant leader is the leader that's going to succeed over the long period of time. The taskmaster is going to have some early results, but the turnover in that company is going to be high. And so it's the servant leader that really wants the best for other people and ties and connects the dots between the best for that human and the best for the mission of the organization, is able to get that human to see how pursuing my dreams and goals can further the mission of the organization. The great leader that can tie those things together is going to be the leader that wins tomorrow.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. That aggressive push. I mean, I made a lot of money doing that, like a lot of money doing that. But I never found joy and happiness. I found
Right.
alcoholism and hatred and
Yeah.
torn up relationships
Right.
until I really started changing. Now the relationships that I have are genuine and whole and can grow.
Good. Good for you.
And the companies are growing in a different kind of way, right? What I have found is that when you step back and you start leading differently like that your companies start growing organically instead of smile and dial, which is a whole lot better. I mean, I still like to smile and dial, but it's a better way to grow. It's hard though.
It's more attractive, it's more authentic, it's more fulfilling. The other style of leadership is usually driven out of insecurity and ego, a combination of insecurity and ego. And that simply is not going to stand the test of time.
So when you're running a business I think at any stage, and I've been at, I've run $10 million companies. We've had $15 million exits. I've run companies that have had $25 annual revenue, across the board. I mean, there's not one that I haven't seen. I've done business with Fortune 5s. I've built data centers for the largest coal companies on the planet. There's no company size that I haven't seen. And leadership, I find, is something we don't talk about enough, right? It's this HR task, right? And I find that it's buddies and stuff like that. So, but when you're going through there and you're doing this business, all of them, from the $25 a year to the literally Fortune 5 on the planet, go through financial troubles. They go through ebbs and flows. They, all of those things. But for the small guy, under 10 million revenue, under 1 million revenue, under 1 million is rough, really rough business.
Yep.
Got payroll, got mortgage, he's got rent on his building, got customers not paying him on time, wife or husband's up their butt, tuition's due. How do you have all of that going on, maintain faith that you can pull it off, and not live in a place of fear?
Yeah. Okay, you just painted like one of the most difficult possible scenarios on planet Earth for an entrepreneur.
And we're all going to be there.
Is that man or woman right there? And what I say to the sub 7-figure people, it actually doesn't change that much from 7 to 8 to 9. It only changes in scale, right?
New level, new devil. Actually, I think it gets harder.
Yeah.
At some point, you're like, 4.5, no big deal. We'll figure that out. But that's way later. No.
Yeah. I would say to that struggling and I've been there. I've started several of my own companies. I know exactly, I told you before we push record is that I'm 100% unemployable. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 25 years of age. So working for another human, like, that's not a thing for me. I like building my own stuff. So I understand that man or woman in that scenario, that they believe in something, they have a vision for their life, and they have an idea of time freedom and financial freedom. And right now they're like, that seems impossible. I'm working harder now than I did in my W-2 trying to build this thing. And what I'd say to that person is, I know it's hard for you to understand now, but yes, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to work 60, 70 hours a week, most likely right now to build. But the building needs to be scalable. That's what I'd tell that person. If all you're doing is the job and then you're not scaling the infrastructure for the future, that's going to be your mistake. And that goes for any size, Ken. So most companies at whatever size, they typically don't scale for the next size. They've scaled to where they are, and they think that scale, and when I talk about scale, I mean systems and processes and leadership, both. Are you scaling your systems? Are you scaling your leaders? And when I say scaling leaders, I mean critical thinking and problem solving. That's what we talk about. Having a larger base of people who are able to make decisions and solve problems, so it's not bottlenecked at the top. So that entrepreneur under 7 figures, I'd say to them, what are you doing right now to scale critical thinking, problem solving across a larger, and it may at that point be just one other person. Are you documenting SOPs? The answer is almost always going to be no.
Always.
They're going to be like, what are you talking about? SOP, I just do what's in my head. That's the problem. You're doing what's in your head. No one else knows how to do these scalable, repeatable skills. Even at sub 7 figures, you should be documenting SOPs, so your infrastructure, your operational infrastructure, and you should be multiplying your problem-solving, critical thinking skills. If you're not doing that, you're just stuck.
I'd like to tell you about a conversation I had with a manager the other day about SOPs.
Okay, dude. Go.
It's a gym, and I was talking with the new general manager, and about 2 months in, and he's there, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to start doing. Like, you did this reclaim old leads activity. You sent 1,500 emails. You sent 1,500 texts. You got 80 responses. You got 20 people in the door. Good job. Write all that down. Write out that SOP. And then keep that SOP. And in 3 months, you're going to do that again. He's like, well, I can just put it on my calendar to do that again in 3 months. I'm like, yeah, but we have to document all of this procedure because you're not the one always going to be doing this. And that struck fear into this general manager, right? And I had to sit with him and say, this isn't so that we can fire you. This is so that you can do the other work, right? This is so that you can grow and that you can have 5 people underneath you doing these things. But you have to go through this process to develop your standard operating procedures and your key performance indicators so that we know what to do so we can task this stuff to other people. And I think this was the clearest time that I've realized having an employee document procedure is scary to them.
For sure it is.
And how do you overcome that for a company that has never done SOPs or a company that thinks they do good standard operating procedures, but it's really just a couple notes on a manager's desk?
Yeah. Yeah, here's how I teach it. I run into that fear at the 8 and 9 figure level. So that's not just a sub 7-figure level. I run into that 8 and 9. So we come in and we look at everybody's infrastructure. We come in and we're building 2 things at the same time, parallel tracks. All the scalable infrastructure, like we're talking about scalable systems and processes, and then the leadership development, they have to go hand in hand. And so we'll come in and we'll write what we call seat description, just clearly define roles and responsibilities for each seat. Most people call it a job description. We call it a seat description. And then SOPs for every seat and documented process and procedures. And they'll say something like, why do I need to write a seat description for my seat? I know what I do. And I'll say, like you said, I'll say like, well, you may not be in that seat forever. And they're like, wait, are we writing these things so we can replace ourselves? And I don't know. We're writing these things so we multiply you. So the way I teach it is, I want you to imagine we are planting another branch in Montana or in Salt Lake City or in Portland, Oregon. And we're gonna multiply the branch because we're scaling so well and we're building so well. Now we're gonna plant another branch. We need to be able to communicate this very clearly and easily without all the trouble of trying to pull it out of your head. Like, so when I teach it from a scalability multi-site idea, they get it. The lights go on and they go, oh, okay, I get it now. It's not to replace you, it's to multiply you.
Or I love that you call it seed or to grow you.
To grow you. Yeah.
Grow your position. Like you
Right.
need 10 people underneath you to do this.
That's right.
So, but then I'm going to go
100%.
way back because earlier you said something about gravity. And if you live like the servant leader has gravity, and that's not untrue, but we deal with a lot of people that don't necessarily want to grow. From my observations of the planet, it feels to me like more people are comfortable where they're at and want to be comfortable where they're at than they want to grow. What responsibility do we have as leaders to either reach down and grab them by the gruff of their neck and pull them up with us, or just let them know that the door is here, and if I do attract you but you spin out, that's on you? Like which responsibility do we have, to pull them in or to let them go?
I played football as a kid, and I remember this tackling drill. And I don't know why this thing sticks in my head. And the coach at the time, Dub Williams was his name, one of the great teachers of our high school. And he said, when you're tackling, if someone has you around the leg, tug once or twice and then go down. And he said, I heard that from Jim Brown, the greatest running back in the history. That was his opinion. Tug once or twice and then just go down because you're about to get a mob, right? He's going to destroy you. And I use that kind of same approach when it comes to developing resistant leaders. I will try to pull them up once or twice. After that, I'm not going to waste my time. And that may sound harsh, but there are people who don't want to grow, but there are people who really want to grow, and I'm going to give them my attention because I'm a multiplier. I want to change the world. And I want to change the world with people who have the humility and the vulnerability to say, I want to be a better version of myself. And the people who are simply afraid of growth, but want to grow, no problem all day. Let's go, bro. I understand fear. I understand discomfort. I understand not wanting to jump off that next cliff. I get that. Let's go. I'll jump with you. But the person who's just stuck and resistant, I'll tug once or twice and then it's like, I'm going to move on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in that world, like adding a negative integer to another negative integer is just going to make it more negative, right? You would like to multiply it, but it doesn't work. We try so hard. And it's really sad for me when it's loved ones. Like when you grow and you see your loved ones, they just can't get there.
Yeah.
It's really, really challenging.
Some people won't travel with you. That's a hard reality I learned early on is some people will not make the climb with you. And that's a tough loss. Sometimes there's grief in that, the loss of relationships or friendships. If we're talking that level, there's real loss, almost like the death of a relationship. And to keep climbing upward to the best version of Ken Cox or HR Huntsman or whoever we're working with, that can be a challenging climb.
Yeah, I teach a lot of things. My favorite thing to teach is youth boxing. I love it. And on our we have a big team. We're the largest in our district and 13 districts in the country. We have the female fighter of the year on our team.
That's awesome.
And she's just amazing in every single way. And I talk to her a lot about this kind of thing, visualizing and being a great leader.
Yeah.
Brings me to a question. We've talked a little about, is scary to scale, scary to grow.
Sure, of course.
You can't live in a place of fear.
Yeah.
So how does somebody do scary stuff and not coming from a place of fear?
Let me tell you a great story. I was at a leadership conference, and up on stage was the first female Marine fighter combat pilot in all the Marines, flew in Desert Storm.
Nice.
Right. Just an amazing woman. She retired a lieutenant colonel. And so the host is just interviewing her on stage and talking about her combat stuff. And she's transitioning to a leadership career. Anyway, I'm Air Force. She gets off stage and she's walking down the aisle, and I just stepped out and thanked her for her service and told her I was Air Force. And I said, because she talked about being afraid when she flew into combat. And I asked her, probably the dumbest question I've ever asked. I said, were you afraid when you flew into combat? I mean, what was that like? She says, H, I was so afraid. Like, of course I was afraid. And I was so afraid that there were times that I wet my pants. And I said, no way. That's crazy. I said, well, what'd you do then? She said, I flew into combat with wet pants. I have a sticky note on my monitor in my office now that says fly into combat with wet pants. Escaping fear is not the deal. That's not even a thing. You're going to be afraid, but the greatest version of yourself is on the other side of that comfort zone. The greatest version of Ken Cox or HR Huntsman or any listener right now is on the other side of that. And yes, it's scary, and you just freaking fly into combat with wet pants. It's not the absence of fear, it's the movement in spite of it. So step into that deal and you're going to realize it's not as scary as you thought it was.
Reminds me of the buffalo and cow story. The buffaloes run into the storm and the cows run from it, and the cows get beat by hail, and the buffalo get to live on the other side with fresh flowers and wet grass to eat. So face the fear. And I think we hear all the time, like, you can't live in fear. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared. It's not okay. Well, I mean, everybody's can live their own life, but if you want to be extraordinary, you want to excel in life, and you're going to have to figure out how to, sit with that fear, let it pass through you, and then do the scary thing anyway.
Yeah, that's right. You're not going to escape fear. You just have to either press through it or let it beat you, let it defeat you. And that's just not an option for me. For some people that is, but that's not an option for me.
I don't have that flight response thing that people talk about.
Right.
I wish I did. I could probably have left some situations earlier than I did in my life.
I'd have a few less broken noses for sure.
HR, I've had a blast talking with you today. If
Thanks,
somebody wanted to work with you, what the prime person, like, where are they at in business in life? Explain that person to us. If they're out there watching, like, oh my God, HR can help me get through X, Y, or Z. This is where I'm at right now, and I want to punch through like the best optimal person. And then how can they get started with you?
That person would have the humility and vulnerability enough to accept outside counsel. Like my John Simmons changed my life, to realize that I don't know everything. There are people that can aid my growth. So at least have the humility and vulnerability that you don't have to know everything. And then the people that normally reach out to us, they're a bit stuck. They've hit a ceiling of scalability with themselves and their team. They want to learn more about the art and craft of leadership. They want to address blind spots, imposter syndrome, stuff that they can't see. And they want an outside person to say, hey, ma'am, sir, bro, look at this thing. And they want to be more impactful with their team, and they want their teams to scale and grow. So we love working with leaders and teams. And the best way to do it is simply email me. I'm an old school Gen X dude. Just HR@yourleadersedge.com. just email me and let's begin a chat.
Wonderful. I love it. Thank you so much. HR, Diary of a CEO is my favorite podcast. And Steven, at the end of every episode, asks his guest to write a question for the next guest. He sells the deck of cards, and I've got all of his questions. I'm going to pull a random question from this deck.
Okay, this should be great.
This is from Chris Williamson.
Chris, okay.
What topic is no one talking about now that historians will study in the future? So what topic is no one talking about right now that historians will study in the future? That's a tough
one.
One.
You didn't prepare me for this. That is a tough one.
Really tough.
What's a topic no one's talking about now that historians will study in the future? I'll speak to America. And this is going to open a can of worms, so I'll say it and leave it here. How did we grow to become a company that accepts such pathetic leadership at the highest level? On both sides of the aisle, let me be clear. On both sides of the aisle, why are we accepting, and I am nonpartisan here, I think they're all pathetic.
I could not agree more with you, Chris.
So I'm a bipartisan. How have we accepted such poor leadership at the highest level? That's all I got.
Yeah, I don't think people have a good understanding of what leadership is, of what good leadership is. And I think I like to change it to the word of stewardship.
Okay.
Instead of leadership. Like, hey, this is the world that I like to live. And if you want to be part of this, I'm happy to be your steward. Yeah. And you can step into it and we can live together. I'm a bit of an anarchist. So I'm gonna have two topics right now because I think they're both wildly important. And the first one, it is being talked about, but by like maybe 20,000 people on the planet, maybe 10 people on the planet, the need right now for ethical power invention, whatever that is. Our planet is stuck, I think, in the way we create power. We have a linear approach to electricity in our country, in our world, where we create it, we use it, and we let it go. But we all know energy cannot be transferred or can't be destroyed. It can only be transferred. So I think a more ethical approach to how we capture, use, and reuse energy on our planet is something that needs to be talked about at a great length. And then with everything else that's going on our planet, I mean, people are talking about AI and robotics and all those things. Where I look at that is that we need really leaders and people to start living from a place of spirituality and love instead of ego and fear. Yeah. And I think that if we can accomplish those two things on our planet, then those are the two core principles in my mind that lead us to utopia. And I don't see any other path to utopia but that.
Right.
So if you think that the world should be talking about something more and you're in the audience and you're watching this right now and you feel like you need to get something out, please leave it in the comments. What should our leaders be talking more about today? It's important. And, we live in this beautiful time of 2025, 2026 where every voice can be heard.
Yeah.
HR,
you and I and every one of your listeners, we get to decide how we lead where we are. And rather than wait for other people to lead well, let's just lead well where we are.
The universe is your gift. Do with it as you see fit. Yeah, and hopefully those are amazing things. HR, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Ken. It's a joy, my friend.